Hello, everyone, and welcome to the class for the PFAFF Performance Icon. This information can also be used for the Creative Icon, the first generation, in sewing. So in this class series, we're going to have a few different videos about this machine so we can cover all the bases, but we're going to start with threading the machine. Then we're going to go through all the front buttons, to the display, to all the features and functions of this wonderful sewing machine. This is actually one of my favorite machines, so I'm very excited to make this video for you all. So we are going to get started now with threading. All right, to get started, we are going to wind our bobbin. So we're going to open up our lid. We're going to pull our tower completely to the top. We're going to raise our spool pins. Now we have these large discs. These need to go onto the spool pin, and it's going to make a base for the thread to sit on. So to wind the bobbin, we're going to click the thread into the tower. We have this little round guide right here. The thread is just going to slip completely into this guide. Then we're going to go under this finger, and then we're going to stretch over to the bobbin winder. Now there's two different ways I can do this. I can either put the bobbin on and wrap the thread around a few times, or I can stick the thread through the hole that is in the bobbin. I actually like to stick the thread through the hole. So then I get the thread coming from inside out, push this all the way onto the bobbin winder. The PFAFF symbol has to be facing upward in order for the bobbin to go onto the bobbin winder. When I push the little guy over to engage the bobbin winder, I'm going to get a pop-up on my display, and that is where I can set the speed to which it's going to wind, and then I can hit the little button on the display, which is a little play symbol, and then the bobbin winds. Of course, I'm not showing you the display right now, so I don't have to change the camera angle, but the bobbin's going to fill, and it's going to fill nice and even, and once it's done filling, it's going to turn off automatically. So we'll let this completely fill up. All right, now it is done, and we can remove the bobbin. So when we pull the bobbin off, there is a razor blade in here that will cut off our tail. Now we're ready to insert the bobbin and thread the sewing machine. All right, now that the thread has come down the front of the machine, we have a little guide right here at the needle clamp, and it's just going to click into this guide. So I'm going to take the thread and we're going to pull it from right to left until it clicks into that little guide. Now we get to use our fully automatic needle threader. This first little point here that's sticking down, the thread goes under that finger there. Now we have this little pinch point right here where the thread clicks into here. And now on the side of the machine is a cutter that is going to cut off the tail. Once that is done, now we can hit the threader button, which is a button. I'm going to change the camera angle, which is this button right here on the machine. So when I hit this button, the machine threads the needle for me, completely automatic. I really love this. I wish this was on every sewing machine. It takes the human element out of it so that we're not messing up our needle threader by trying to hold the thread and pull too hard on the threader. The machine 100% takes care of it on its own. This is a great threader. I also do the service at my business. And this threader is one of the best threaders in the industry. I never have difficulty with this threader. So I absolutely love this part of the sewing machine. So now we have completely threaded the top. We have wound the bobbin, and now we can insert the bobbin. But I want to talk really quickly that there is another way to wind our bobbin, which is a great feature on the machine, is we can actually rewind our bobbin right from the needle without unthreading the sewing machine. So if we are sewing, and all of a sudden we start realizing we're running out of bobbin thread and we don't want to take our thread completely out, we can wind from the needle. So let me change my camera view so that you can see this. To wind from the needle, it's very simple. There is a little slot in the front of the machine right here that will guide the thread back over to the bobbin winder. So what we do is we take our thread from our needle, we stretch it over here, and now we get to go right to our bobbin winder, and it'll spin the thread on the bobbin right from the needle without unthreading the sewing machine. Now that we have our bobbin ready to go into the machine, we pull our release tab right here, and then the cover pops up. So we take that off. Now, these bobbins are special bobbins. They will only fit in the machine the proper way. So if you try to put it in upside down, it simply will not fit. So it only fits with the PFAFF symbol facing up. And that helps you to make sure that the thread's always right. So the machine will not let you put the bobbin in with the thread coming the wrong direction off the bobbin. So it's a really nice, again, really nice feature. So what we do is we take the bobbin and we drop it into the machine. Now, right here is a little catch that the thread needs to catch into. It's this little metal piece right here, and there's a little opening. So what we do is we slide the thread along this gray piece here, put a finger on the bobbin so that the bobbin won't rotate, and we can pull the thread tightly, and you'll feel that click. So it went into this little metal piece, and now it just clicked in by pulling the thread tight. So now from there, we bring it to this finger in the top left-hand corner. So we're going to go around that. Then we're going to come down, and we're going to come right here. And in here, there is a cutter blade that's going to cut off the tail. So before you cut the tail off, take your cover, put your cover on, grab your thread tail, and pull it. Now the bobbin is completely done. Everything I say, it's locked and loaded, and we are ready to sew. After we've sewn a stitch, I'm going to show you how you can quickly look at your bobbin and make sure that it is in there correctly. There's a little something to look for that you see, and you know that you've got it 100% right. So I'm going to show you that after we've sewn. All right, so we're going to sew a stitch. All right, so if you want to make sure that you have your bobbin in correctly, when you look into your bobbin window, you will always see a piece of thread going across the top of the bobbin. It'll be off to the left-hand side. If you see the thread going across the top of the bobbin, you have it 100% correct. You did it right. If you do not see that thread, it is wrong. Please take the bobbin out and put it back in. I want to talk just for a second about what symptoms would be if we happen to put our bobbin into the machine wrong. If we put the bobbin in wrong, the stitch is going to look bad on the top side of the fabric. So the stitch on top would look incorrect. If you ever sew on a machine and it looks bad on the underside of the fabric, so you turn the fabric over on the underside and it's loose and loopy, well, that has to do with the top thread. So if that ever happens, we want to take the top thread out and we want to re-put it back in the machine because we did not do something where it caught all the spots or we didn't pull tight enough to make sure it was in there all the way. So it's the top thread if anything happens on the underside of the fabric. But if the bobbin's in incorrectly, you're going to see it on the top. So exactly opposite. But this bobbin is in correctly. All right, so now we're going to talk about how the buttons on the front of the machine works. So we're going to start with the presser foot buttons. Of course, this machine has no lift or lever, so it is controlled with buttons. But there's a few things I like to emphasize when I'm teaching the class for this machine. One is you do not have to hit the down button to lower the presser foot. Anytime I've touched the foot control with my foot, the presser foot will drop down. And of course, if I keep holding down on the foot control, the machine will start running. So just to talk about that again, you don't always have to go like this, go like this, go like this. Just touch the foot control, presser foot is down against the fabric. So, but now we do have up and down buttons. So the top one, when we hit the up button, the presser foot will lift. But when we hit the up button a second time, the presser foot will now go into extra high. So it has lifted to its highest position it could possibly go. And at the same time, the feed teeth turned off. This is a really nice feature because when I'm sliding my fabric in, if I've got a lot of really, big bulk to get under there, it won't hang up on the feed teeth. It is a smooth surface. So now we don't have to re-engage the feed teeth. They're automatically going to re-engage on the first stitch. It will not miss a beat. So when I start sewing, you'll see it has instantly clicked back on and they're off and running again. So that is the up button. So the up button has 2 touches. So touch 1 brings it up. Touch 2 brings it to extra high and lowers the feed teeth. So now we do have a down button. So the down button is going to put the presser foot down against the fabric, just like it would if we touched the foot control. But now the presser foot down button has a second touch. So if I touch it a second time, the presser foot jogs up just a tiny amount. This is nice because this is where I can reposition my fabric, get my needle right where I want to start sewing, and then instead of hitting the down button again, I could just hit the foot control and I'm off and running. So each button has 2 touches. So down brings the foot down, down a second time, just puts it up a little bit to reposition your fabric. So really nice how they have these designed. All right, so now let's talk about our start stop button. So this is the button below it. Here it looks like a little play and stop symbol like that you would see on a VCR or an old cassette player. Kind of has that same look. But I like how they have this button designed. So the first is, when we hit it, it's obvious the machine is going to start sewing. But this works a lot like cruise control in your car, and I'll explain that in just a second. So what I typically do is I turn the speed on the machine down, and I'll show you where that is in a little bit, to where I want the machine to run. And then I can hit the start stop button, which will start the machine sewing. And when I hit it again, of course, the machine stops. But let me show you something else here. When I start sewing, I don't have to reach back up to stop it using the button. I can stop it by using my foot control. So when I hit the play button, the machine is going to start sewing. As soon as I touch my foot on the foot control is taken back over and it has stopped the running of the machine. I really like this because it feels like I have more control that way. I don't have to panic about finding that button again when I'm getting to my end. I can just give my foot control a short tap with my foot. And of course, it takes back over. So that is our start stop button. Now the next button down is our reverse button. I like how they have the reverse programmed. It's a little bit different than we see on other machines. The way that the reverse works, when the needle is not moving, so if I stop sewing and I touch the reverse turns on. It will stay on until I hit the reverse again, which will turn it off. This gives me really good control, especially if I'm trying to backstitch. So then I can sew a couple stitches forward and I can stop. I can turn on my reverse and then I can sew a couple stitches back and I can stop. And then I can hit my reverse again, which is going to make it come back forward. I like this because traditionally on a sewing machine, I'm having to hit buttons and I'm having to hold and do all these things at the same time to try to backstitch. And I may end up backstitching too far. So being that I can just turn it on and have it stay on, stop, turn it off, and have it come back forward, it gives me better control. Now the reverse works a second way. So the other way it works is if you are actively sewing, meaning that your needle is still moving and you hold the reverse button down, then it only reverses for as long as you're holding the button down. So let me demonstrate. So we are sewing, the needle is moving, I hold the reverse down, it back stitches, I let go of the button and it comes back forward. But the needle has to be moving, otherwise it stays in reverse. So that is how the reverse button works. So now we're going to go across this front row here. So the first one is our automatic needle threader. So I will use the cutter real quick and we'll talk about that in a second. So if we were threading our needle, we would just hit this button here and it threads for us. Okay, so that is our needle threader button. The one next to it is our scissor button. So the scissor button also works in a couple different ways. So one way that it works is when we sew and when we stop and we hit the cutter, of course, it just cuts immediately like we would expect it would. But if we are sewing and we keep the needle moving when we hit the cutter, it is going to lock the stitch for us before it cuts. So watch how this happens. So we sew, the needle is still moving, I hit the cutter, it is locking, and then it is going to cut. So that's a little shortcut that's built into the cutter. Now, the cutter also does something else that if I'm doing a pattern stitch, so I'm going to come to my screen, I know you can't see it yet, and I'm going to grab a stitch pattern. So if I have a stitch pattern going, when I activate the cutter while I'm sewing that pattern, as long as the needle is still moving, it is going to complete that pattern before it cuts. So I picked a little scalloped edge. So I'm going to start sewing this. I'm going to turn off the walking foot for this. And I am now going to touch my cutter button. So the cutter is activated, but it is not going to cut until this pattern is finished. And it locks automatically each time that we do this function. Okay, so now I have one single completed pattern. So those are the different ways that the cutter button functions. So I'm going to go back to a straight stitch so that we can talk about this one. So this one here is our automatic back stitch or automatic lock stitch function. So when this is turned on and we start sewing, the machine, let me put the walking foot back on, the machine is going to back stitch first. And now I can sew when I get to the end of my seam, I can hit my back stitch again, and it is going to back stitch for me automatic. So this is so that I don't have to reverse to back stitch. It is just going to take care of it automatically for me. All right, so that's the lock stitch or the fix feature, back stitch feature, has a lot of different names. So this one right here is a pattern restart button. So let's say we are sewing this scalloped and we're doing a whole row of these scallops. And when we got to the end of our fabric, we were in the middle of a scallop and we're like, uh-oh, well, we're going to reposition and I want to be back to the beginning of the scallop. If I hit this button, it takes me always back to the very beginning of the pattern that we are on. So this is pattern restart. So it takes me back to the beginning of the stitch pattern. All right, this one right here, I really like the way PFAFF has this one set up. This is our needle down button. So when we activate needle down position, the presser foot pivots for me automatically. So when I sew and stop, the needle is going to stop in the fabric and the presser foot is going to pivot up. This is great for appliques. It's great for any time you need to make a turn and a twist. It is great for chain piecing. There's so many great benefits to having the presser foot pivot up for you. But I want to talk about a few other little features, how we can activate needle up down by using our foot control. And I want to talk about what happens when we are using our foot control to activate needle positions when we're in the down position. So right now we're going to turn the needle down off, so it's back to normal. So now when we stop sewing, it is going to stop with the needle in the up position. So now our foot control has a tap feature. If you've been with PFAFF for a while, you're already used to this. But if you haven't, this is a really nice feature. And it's one of those ones that's maybe a little shortcut, a little hidden feature in the machine, but I really love it. So if we give our foot control a short tap with our foot, it will activate needle down. Now it's not turning on the setting like it is when we hit the button. This will be a one-time needle down if we need to make a quick turn. I am going to grab the foot control so that you can see it here. And I'm going to try to do this with my hands so you can see how this works. So right now, of course, we're sewing normal. The needle is stopping up. So if I took my foot and I went like this, you'll see the needle went down. Let me lift this up. And now it's down for a quick turn and pivot. So again, sewing, I can stop, give it a tap with my foot, and it has activated needle down position for me. So that, I use this one a lot. I think I use this more than I actually reach up to hit the buttons. Because what I do, I just sometimes sewing and just need to do a quick turn, and in which case I'm gonna tap the foot. Now, if we are set to needle down, so now let's activate needle down. And we are always stopping with the needle in the down position. So our foot control also has a tap feature. So right now, of course, stop needle down, the foot is pivoting up each time. So if I give my foot control a tap, first thing it does is it puts my presser foot down. So if you are sewing needle down and there is that time that you want the foot to stay down against the fabric, you just give this a short tap. Now if I tap it again, it now puts the needle up also. So I have 2 taps that can happen when I'm sewing with needle down activated. So let me show you this again. Sewing, needle down, presser foot pivot, give it a tap, presser foot went down against the fabric, tap again, needle is now up. So that is how the needle up down feature works on the machine. It's one of the best designed needle up down features. So in this first part of the video, we have covered bobbin winding, threading the sewing machine, and what the buttons do on the front of the machine. Now in the second video, we are going to start talking about the display and some of the features built into this display.